This show contains profanity, advice you should never follow, humor that you might not enjoy. The names have been changed to protect the guilty. Do not try this at home.
You know it doesn't really affect gravity, right?
Greetings, yellow blazers, blue blazers, Bill Bryson lovers, Bill Bryson haters.
Transformacers,
Yeah, cloak makers.
Sharknado wears,
What the fuck is that?
Sharktopusses. They're on my DVR right now.
Oh,
Just
okay.
bear with me.
Welcome to the Fox and Puss podcast. My name is Pox Holiday, and sitting to my right.
Puss and Boots.
And this week we're going to talk about animals. It didn't come out the right way.
Too bad. If that was the other way around, you would make me keep it.
You're right. We'll be right back.
For the win!
I blame that intro on Second Wind beer.
Well,
Yeah, well.
deal with it.
Well, this week on the Pox and Puss podcast, we're going to talk about animals, right?
Animals.
Animals and animal stuff. Have you had a good couple of weeks?
I have.
Yeah, might have been all right.
I was sick last week. I feel like I get the plague on the regular, but I'm feeling a lot better now.
Yeah.
Probably not just a little bit in part to the fact that I bought a juicer.
Oh, that's right. You have a juicer.
And I am a juicing super freak now.
Yeah, I have a juicer and use the hell out of it for the first 2.5 weeks. And it's just that cleaning part that...
It's definitely a pain in the ass. Especially
Yes.
because I have juiced morning, evening, and night.
What's your favorite juice so far?
Oh man, you don't even know. Like, I'm still in the kitchen sink phase where it's like if it grew from the ground, it's going in the juicer.
Yeah.
And yeah, it all depends.
Yard clippings.
Oh, I mean, fucking beet greens and let's see. What all have I juiced? Let's go through the list. Cucumbers, celery, kale, ginger, pears, apples, nectarines, limes, lemons, turnips, radishes, beets.
These are all examples of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's probably a fair number of things too that I'm looking forward to juicing.
Yeah. And always the two-stepper that I like, that the part 2 is then taking the juice, like some of them, and putting them into a blender with an avocado.
Ooh.
That's smoothie heaven right there.
That's the end all be all.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very, like when you have that fuck spinach, it's definitely like, diddle-diddle-diddle, bong, bong. You couldn't see it, but like my biceps popped up with anchors on them.
Yep.
And
You heard it here first.
yep, and I squashed an avocado in
Yep.
between my elbow there. But
You
yeah,
got squinty-eyed.
yeah, I did.
Corn cob pipe magically appeared.
And I did Mr. Salty
He's
hat.
dressed like a sailor. I don't know.
Well, I
what
was
just
already dressed
happened.
like a sailor.
Well,
But so something interesting popped up, just something random popped up on Instagram the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And we have on our Instagram page, we only have like 38 pictures or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one that's just a bunch of words that have the 828-394-4526 or the Pox and Puss hotline. And it says, hey, give us a call if you have anything you want to tell us about. If you have a great backpacking story, hiking story, whatever. And a woman just replied to it the other day, and I thought I would read it here for us.
okay.
Emma Lily, just go to our page, you'll find it. It says, yes, AT Thru-Hiker 2012, conceived my daughter somewhere in New England. Her middle name is Mackay, after the trail famous Benton Mackay, of course. And it was hiking was one of the greatest experiences of my life, only second to motherhood.
Wow.
Yeah. I know that there was the year that I hiked, the year before, there had been a child conceived on the AT, and they named her Georgia Maine.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then like whatever the last name was, but Georgia Maine. I'm like, that's not bad.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Did you know of any AT babies?
I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
Despite the fact that I did, but they were not purposeful. So we'll leave it at that. Not mine, by the way.
Okay, yeah,
not
yeah.
mine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That was Trail of.
Trail of love.
Yeah. That was,
Been a little singy lately.
yeah, well,
Well, that will happen.
you got the music in you.
Don't stop. All right. So there was that. I had to grab my phone here because it has.
Congratulations, Emily Lily.
And I was like, well, fucking 828-394-4526 would have been pretty sweet. But
Emil Lily?
yeah, I don't know.
Emma Lily?
So another thing that happened on Instagram was that somebody posted a picture. Let's see, Naomi Blair posted I guess they're going to thru-hike next year. She and her friend, boyfriend, husband, I don't know. They went out and they bought instruments to take with them on the Appalachian
Penny
Trail.
whistles.
A tin whistle.
Yeah.
And
Harmonica.
she got a shaker. All right. And so it says here that they said that they addressed us at Pox and Puss as a necessary gear item. Also, new theme song? I think so. We'll let you
boy.
folks be the judge of that. Thank you for thinking of us. We'll definitely keep that in mind as far as one of our theme songs.
It's so very perky. It reminds me of
A tin whistle.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Ooh.
That's like, it like summons the minions, the little orange
That's
people.
very good. Maybe we could just use it as our Willy Wonka segment we do every week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Ooh, another thing I saw on Instagram, and it's been popping up a lot. I don't know. I think it's somewhere in New Jersey or northern Pennsylvania, but there is a restaurant that literally, like, you've seen the fake sign that's like, the old school sign, like hippies use side door.
Yeah.
This one is no thru-hikers at bar, must sit outside or on patio or something like that.
Dang.
Yeah. And
Seats taken.
yeah, can't sit here. And it's like, really? And I mean, I guess they can do whatever they want to in the business or
Right.
something like that. But were you ever, air quotes, discriminated against while you're on the trail?
I know I have touched on this story before, but I always get Daleville, Troutville, and Troutdale confused. They kind of all are the same to me.
Right.
Whichever one of those is relatively busy, I want to say Daleville.
Okay.
I wish I could remember the name of the chain because I would probably call those MFers right on out. But
Thank you for not cursing.
you're welcome. I remember we checked in. The guidebook said specifically that they entertain a hiker rate.
Mm-hmm.
We got our hotel room. There was a computer in the lobby that was free internet, and so I jumped on there. And while I was sitting there, and I think we had paid like $40 for our room or something like that, $40 a night, and it must have been a little bit more than that because the next people to walk through the door was like a family of 4, and they came in and they were on a family vacation. They came in to get a room, and the clerk said, well, that'll be, and whatever it was $5 less than they had charged us for the same room. Like same, 2 queen-size beds, non-smoking, like everything was the same. They didn't have any special whatevers, and that was the first time that I connected that this hotel had charged just extra, and that was the hiker rate.
Wow.
Because, I mean, and I can understand from an innkeeper point of view, a hiker room is probably a little bit harder to clean and a little bit more elbow grease involved. But if that's the case, like, holy cow, man, like,
Yeah.
that seems discriminatory to charge extra for a group of people. I think it's one thing to like have rooms set aside for hikers that are
Right.
maybe like the old smoking rooms, maybe the ones that you
Yeah.
don't put the brand new furniture in.
Yeah.
And no hikers are really going to give a shit about that. My standards for what consisted of a good hotel room went way down while I was on the AT, and I think pretty much now I could sleep just about anywhere. happily. But holy cow. Yeah, so charging extra for that. And I also remember, I don't necessarily think that this was meant to be discriminatory, but it seemed to be a theme that every time me and the guys that I was hiking through the Shenandoah National Park with, whenever we would stop at not the waysides, but I guess like the inns.
Right.
And usually the inns had a restaurant.
Yeah.
And we'd go to those restaurants. Like, it didn't matter if it was time for a meal or not. We were going to stop and eat at those restaurants.
Right.
And every time we would go in and say, can we have a table for 3? And they would always say, of course, right this way. And they would walk us through the dining area on the outside. And it was always a back corner table that was like the furthest away from everybody else, probably because we stunk.
Yeah.
But
I think it's funny because I think I set that up for you. I set you up for failure because
oh boy.
When I got to Big Meadows or whatever it is there in the Shenandoah, same thing. It was like we had kind of done the breakfast, lunch, dinner challenge kind of thing, and or something along those lines. We just like lunch and dinner. Earlier that day, it was one of the days where I had been asked if I was Australian. I've talked about that before, my accent. And they were like, oh, are you fellas Australian? Like, no, not the opposite.
Not even a little.
Yeah.
But thank you for asking.
300 miles south of here. And so when we went into the big restaurant there, they sat us like right in front. And it was kind of busy. It was dinner time. And went in and we're sitting there and it's kind of started to clear out a little bit, and not like around us. And there was this one couple sitting like the next table over, like probably like 8 feet away from us. And, we're just sitting there talking. Barf and I are just having dinner. And then it's like they get up, but they take their plates with them. And so they move like 3 tables away from us because we smelled so bad. And we told them, like, we're very sorry about that. They're like, there's really nowhere to sit outside here. And they're like, no, it's fine. You guys are high. Like, they understood.
It's cool that they were understanding, like, that they weren't just like, let's get up and leave because they stink.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. They understood.
Take some pride in yourself. Go take a shower. And it was like, oh, they're hiking. That's cool, but they still smell.
Yeah. And then we went downstairs and drank blue motorcycles. I've talked about that on here before. It's basically just a blue Long Island iced tea. And
it doesn't taste like an iced tea.
No, it's blue with blue Caraco in it. Ooh. And it's redonkulous, especially when you haven't drank a whole lot and you've been hiking all day.
Doesn't take much.
No, not at all. I don't recall being. I'm sure that I was discriminated from Georgia to Maine as far as hitchhiking goes. White guy with a crazy beard and backpack.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure I was discriminated against in other ways just without knowing it. But, I imagine that people have been burned by thru-hikers before in areas. And
I would imagine, like, if I was a business owner, and of course, like, I love hikers, so I'm sure if I was a business owner that could anyway cater to hikers near a trail like that, like, I would welcome it. But at the same time, I could understand how non-hiker types would be pissed. You know what? I do remember one time in I think I was in NC. I think it was not far from Irwin. Not to lump Irwin. I know Irwin has had a bad rap for not being a very good trail town, but I want to say it wasn't too far away from there. That I went to a laundromat. And it was run by a little old couple, and there were signs up everywhere, obviously directed at hikers. I remember, some of us were like, there was nowhere to sit. Like, it was very, very obviously set up so that it wasn't supposed to be like a loitering kind of thing. Like, you put your stuff in and you went somewhere else. Like, they didn't want you sitting there and hanging out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I remember, some kid had like filled up his, or half filled up his washing machine, started it. He plugged his phone in and then like went next door to get a drink. And he came, and I think I was there like waiting. My clothes were about to buzz, and the owner like unplugged his phone and like threw it across the room. and like under his breath was like, I'm tired of this shit. And
Wow.
and it was like, and I went over there and like picked up his phone and his power cord and held onto it until he got back. And I was like, look, dude, I don't know what's going on here, but
Yeah.
here's your shit. And
Hey, Pox and Puss, it's A. Whitey from We Will Finish. Got a little thing for you. Woke up to the sounds of a screaming female thru-hiker this morning in the shelter. Apparently she was wearing cherry lip balm, and a mouse was nibbling on her lip. Yeah. Anyways, guys have a good day. Figure I'd throw that at you. Later.
it's another one of those things when, although most of the time I'm glad that this is a podcast, seeing as I'm wearing my commemorative podcast sweatpants and ripped up Johnny Swank t-shirt.
Right.
I wish you could see my face.
That was pretty entertaining. I think
It's like my grumpy cat face.
I've seen that referred to as sneeze face. Like you're like about to sneeze, but it's more of a sneeze because of a bad smell face.
That sounds terrible. Makes me never want to use chapstick again.
Did you ever have
we
any?
all know that's not going to happen.
Did you ever have any mice run over you in shelters?
Oh yeah.
I had one run across my face, and the night before, I've talked about it before, but I somewhere past NOC, I can't remember exactly where it was, but it's somewhere, I don't know. But I remember that night, I heard owls making those crazy monkey noises that owls will make sometimes. And then that night, there was like a tornado in Georgia, just a few miles south, that leveled a whole bunch of buildings and killed like 4 people.
Right.
And like, so it was just kind of a weird animal, and storms were going crazy all around us. And but yeah, in the middle of the night, Barf set up his tent. And I just was like, I'm just going to crash into shelter. And like, it was one of those shelters where there's like mouse traps everywhere, like up on stuff. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, like, it's just like any shelter. And then, yeah, sure enough, just like, and it ran across my face at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I think I got back to bed at like 6:30, like, and then was up at like 7:30. But I thought that started off a pretty good round of discussions of different animal things, and got me thinking about, we really haven't talked about animal interactions on the podcast yet. I'm sure we've mentioned them here and there, but
not specifically.
But yeah, I remember, for me, one of my biggest things was, I might have mentioned this, was that I had a bear run like 2 feet in front of me at one point in time in Virginia. I mean, it was a cub, and it went from, as I was hiking, it went from my left side to my right side, and down the right side of the trail was a very steep hill. And so this bear just ran down that hill, and then all I could do was look to my left and just hope to God Mama wasn't to my left, and I just was hoping I wasn't between them.
Right.
With Instagram now having the 15-second video, and Vine with the 5-second video kind of thing, I've seen a lot more pictures. I think Big Yankee, who put up the sign about the hippies use side door kind of thing, hikers, no hikers at the bar.
Right.
He's Nate _gobble_ monster on Instagram. Does a lot of cool stuff, but he has some pretty close-up video of bears being around him on the trail, and that seemed to be one of the biggest ones people are always concerned with, and with bears. And did you have a lot of bear interaction?
I didn't have like an overwhelming amount of bear stuff. I think I saw the obligatory several handfuls in the Shenandoahs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I saw any up until then. I saw a couple after that, and then that was it for me.
Yeah, I saw 3 the entire time. I saw that one. That was my first bear I had ever seen in my life, and it was 2-3 feet away from me. And then I saw one in Pennsylvania, and somewhere else in Virginia. I feel like I saw another one. But then when I worked in New Mexico, I had one that was like horse-sized, walking around our camp for most of the night. So it was like, and I had a group of kids, and it was kind of like, well, guess I'm up.
Well, no one's sleeping tonight.
Yeah, one of those where you're banging pots, and they're like, yeah, I get it. Can you just hand me that food bag over there? Thank you.
Yeah. I do remember having not seen any bears my first day in the Shenandoahs, and I think we like walked into the Shenandoahs and had been there for like 2 hours, and we stopped for a break. And I remember, like, we were getting close to a parking lot, and we figured we'll stop in this parking lot to eat lunch. And maybe 50 feet from the parking lot, like, we couldn't even see the parking lot yet, but we knew that we were really close. This woman comes around the corner, and it was one of those, like, where a stranger starts talking to you and you feel like you missed the first part of the conversation. Like, she just walked up to us and was like, have you guys seen any bears yet? I haven't seen any bears yet. And we're like, no, we haven't seen any bears. And she was like, they told me that I would see bears in the Shenandoah National Forest, and I haven't seen any yet. And it was like, I'm sorry, we just want to eat lunch now. Like, this is weird. So we go and we sit down, and it was like we had no sooner sat down and, like, taken out our food bags than somebody was like, there's a bear, like, right over there. And it was where we had come from on the trail.
Like, where she had asked you?
Pretty much. And so we all kind of, like, go and peek around the corner and look down the trail, and sure enough, there's a big bear. It was the biggest bear that I saw the whole time I was on the trail. There's a big bear, and really all you could see was, like, from his shoulders to his head. The rest of him was, like, around the corner. And out of fucking nowhere, that goddamn lady pops back in. She's like, oh my god, there's a bear. Do you think he would like some peanuts? And I was like, I'll fucking kill you.
Yeah.
Like, really? Really? And like, you know, she's got a handful of peanuts, and I'm like, what's your big plan here? Like,
fucking hand.
what's going on? Like, I'm kind of wondering,
What's your end game, bitch?
Yeah, like, where's your head at on this one? But yeah, no, that crazy lady, she was like young and fit and, like, in her little running outfit, and it was just sort of one of those, like, who are you?
I never get out of my gym clothes.
Where do you come from? Like,
yeah.
But yeah,
I'll tell you, Cary, North Carolina. That's where they come from.
It's probably true.
The international place of, I don't have to go to work, so I'm wearing my gym clothes today.
Yeah. The fittest mothers in the world.
Yes, exactly. Again, not on the AT, but in New Mexico, we were doing a training for the group of people that I worked with, and so, like, 10 of us out in this one group. In the middle of this beautiful, like, actually it's Ted Turner's property, and like lots of stuff in New Mexico, and big grassy fields in front of us, 13,000-foot mountains in the background, and this fucking buffalo just kind of comes up like, hey, what's up, by himself, not with a, like, because Ted Turner has a huge herd, and he just kind of comes walking up into the middle of this field, and then we're all like, wow, that's really cool. And then one of the guys is just like, yeah, I'm going to go get a picture of it. I'm not kidding you. I actually thought about emailing him the other day and saying, like, how close did you get? Because I remember being just like, well, it's about a half day's walk to wherever we can get to. I mean, I'm honest in saying that, and I wound up this guy, we didn't know who we were going to be working with. He wound up being my partner for the summer. I would say under 20 feet that he got. Then he walked up to this buffalo, just snapping pictures. And he had a full SLR camera, and it was just like...
the kind that you can't see how close the buffalo's getting while you're behind it.
And we're all just sitting there like, hey, man, why don't you come on back?
You can't tell that he's making angry eyes at you right now, but he is.
And you can't really yell like, hey, get back over here.
Bear fucker.
You there. Do you need assistance? And we're just like... it was one of those, the buffalo just, like, made, like, one step towards him and then turned and walked off, and we're all just like, holy shit, dude. And he came back like, yeah, hey, what's up? I'm like, oh my god. And then an hour later, like, we found out who our partners were. I'm like, don't you ever fucking go after another buffalo again, dude.
You are not leaving me in the woods with strangers.
With these damn kids.
Yeah.
I am not doing this again.
So here's a funny story.
Ooh, okay. Does it change your pace?
When I was 9, my mother and father and brother, and my brother's a couple years older than me, we went out to Yellowstone. And we went to a dude ranch, like the whole East Coaster shebang.
Right.
The whole we're going out west kind of vacation. And before we left, we were supposed to, this is my mother's summer vacation educational stimulus program was, before we go on vacation, you can write reports about things that we're going to see, and she would grade them, and based on the grade, you would get an amount of money. And it was like, if you got an A, you would get $5.
Nice.
If you got a B, you would get $4. If you got a C, you would get $3. And if you got a D or lower, you wouldn't get anything. And
was your mom a teacher?
no,
Okay.
she's just crazy.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. Just clarify.
So, you know, I think my brother and we didn't really fall for that whole thing a whole lot, but it was sort of we did start like, you know, that was back in like Encyclopedia Britannica days. It wasn't like, oh, we'll just Google it. But we started doing research, and I think we had gotten a couple of books on like, you know, different things about the parks and the animals and this, that, and the other. And we're reading about how dangerous. I think we had rented maybe a couple of like Discovery Channel videos about Yellowstone or whatever.
Right.
And it's always the obligatory. They talk about Old Faithful. They talk about, you know, a couple of the big sites, and they talk a lot about wildlife. And they always talk a lot about how the bison are dangerous, and that people every year get too close, and this, that, and the other, and that, you know, this is the respectful distance. Anything closer than that is dangerous, and this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. And we all watched it, like me and my brother watched it, my mom watched it, like, so everybody was on the same page. I am 9 years old. The first day that we're in Yellowstone, there is a huge field full of bison.
Right.
And they pull the goddamn rental car over, and my mom and my dad and my brother, all three of them get out. And they start, like, and they're like, come on. And I'm like, no.
Didn't you watch the video?
Yeah, I'm like, no, I will not get out. And I sat in the back seat of a rental car, staring out the window and sobbing, because I was really concerned about, like, how am I going to get anywhere when I'm going to watch my entire family get trampled by a herd of bison, and then I'm going to be stranded in a car that I can't get out of because I'm in a national park that's full of things that want to eat me. What am I going to do?
I've been trained to fear this national park.
What am I going to do now? Like, and I sat there and sobbed and cried, and the closer they got, the harder I cried. And then they finally, like, and I mean, it wasn't until they were within, like, 10 feet of the car, I was convinced that they were all going to die. Like, they were all obviously going to, like, end in some horribly tragic, bloody death that I was going to watch through the window of this rental car. And then they all got back in the car, and they were like, see, that wasn't such a big deal. And I'm like, you guys are the assholes. You're the assholes. They get trampled to death by these crazy Western animals that we are not familiar with at all.
Did you watch the video?
You totally watched the video. We read the Bee Encyclopedia together on bison. Yeah, it was, that was terrible.
I had a Shenandoah deer moment. My first day in the Shenandoah, it had been raining a lot, just like I'm sure everybody now is well used to. It had been raining a lot, and we stayed an extra day south of Shenandoah. Like, just one more day in a hotel. Like, it's just downpouring. Like, I don't feel like starting this. But that was one of the only times that we had a timeline that we needed to get through an area, because my family was meeting me on somewhere between there and Harper's Ferry, a couple of days, like maybe a day out of the Shenandoah. And they were just meeting us. We were going to stay in the cabin for 2 days from birthday and family stuff. And so that was the only time we really had a real time crunch, had to be somewhere. And so basically kind of meant, well, that means we kind of need to do a couple longer days than we planned on. So readjust, some food stuff. And so what it meant was basically we needed to do 20 miles our first day out of the hotel. Well, it was just still a nasty day. We started our 20-mile day after lunch. And it was like, all right, here we go. And it's cruising along. And like they talk about in the Shenandoah, it's like, hey, deer. Seeing a deer is like seeing a squirrel. It's like, oh. And at first you're like, wow, those deer, they really let you get right up to them, don't they? People talk about the Virginia blues. I experienced the Virginia blues in about an 8-hour span. I had one day of the Virginia blues.
Wow.
And that was it. I mean, it was that day. And it was like, fuck, I've started too late. I've got to get to this place. Just like put too much pressure on myself. And so it was like deer. Like, oh, there's deer. Take a picture of it. Oh, there's another deer. Wow, I got real close. Took another picture. And then it's like, after a while, you're like, there's fucking deer. They're fucking everywhere. And I was walking along, and I stepped on a rock, and I twisted the shit out of my ankle. Like that twist where you're like, I think I heard a pop.
Yeah.
I think I heard it snap. Like I was like, I think I have just compound fractured my ankle, and you're like, ah. And I was like, fuck. And I looked up, and like 20 feet away from me was this deer chewing like they always do. One ear twitching, the other ear twitching. And I'm like, and I just took out all my aggression on this deer. I was like, fuck you, you fucking deer. And I was just like, yeah. And it was just like,
Yeah.
just looking at me like, I don't give a shit, dude.
I'm a deer in the Shenandoahs.
I sure would like some peanuts.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just sitting there like, fucking, and like, I yelled at a deer for like 25 seconds, and then was like, I'm going to start walking now. And like, but I had that moment where I was like, in the span of 2 seconds, I had the, oh God, I've broken my ankle. What am I going to do? Well, I'm not having a good time today. So if I did break my ankle, fine. And then, then you have that, 1 second later, you're like, oh, I didn't break my ankle. It's just really, really just twisted the shit out of it, and it hurts. But it was like, that was my Virginia blues. Then I got to the shelter that night, and there were like 50 people sleeping inside of the shelter, mainly children, and I was so pissed. I think I've talked about it before, but I walked up and I was like, well, if it isn't a Swiss Family goddamn Robinson. And one guy laughed, and everybody else just stared at me. And then that's the night that I set up my tent and the whippoorwill started. Like, I put my head down. I had lost
Shut
one.
your fucking face, whippoorwill.
I had one earplug. I couldn't find it. I'm like, where the fuck's the other? Where the fuck's the other? One was like, whip-a-wee, 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 for hours. And I'm just laying there like, you gotta be shitting me. And then I woke up the next morning, whip-a-wee, whip-a-wee, whip-a, and it stopped. Like, I opened my eyes 2 whippoorwills later to let me know it was still there. Stopped. It was like, you fucking asshole whippoorwill.
You're one of those people that when you like rolled your hungover ass out of bed,
Mm-hmm.
pulled the pants that were on the floor
Mm-hmm.
on, got in your car, drove and parked in a teacher's spot to get to your 8 a.m. class, and there was a note on the door that said, class today is canceled.
Yeah.
And you were like, fuck you, fuck everybody. Now, meanwhile, like, I was the kid that was like, sweet.
Free day.
I'm going to go eat breakfast. Like,
Yeah,
you were the one that was like, God damn it. God damn you.
Send an email. Yeah. No, that was me. That was me, definitely.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, though, like that, like getting all of that out in one day, it was great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I mean, I got all of that out, and then I was like, okay, cool. And then like I think like either that night or the next night, I met Prof and Peace Pipe and Baltimore
Maybe we
Jack.
just need to like get you a goat or something like that you can scream at, and it'll love you still the same.
Yeah.
Or it won't give a shit. It'll just keep eating your grass.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need to get you some animal that's not prone to getting its feelings hurt. I can't remember if I've told this story or not, but it was like the day that I think it was in Great Smoky Mountain National Park. It was like right after you finish Great Smoky Mountain National Park that there's like, it's like officially, okay, now you're in North Carolina and you're not going to be tap dancing in Tennessee or
Right.
something like that. I remember there was a state line involved.
Yeah.
And like maybe right around like Davenport Gap kind of thing.
Right.
And I'm walking along and I'm looking down and I stopped because it was obviously had been raining for a while. Everything was pretty muddy. And I remember thinking it was really fitting that you had been in these like pretty lush forested areas. And as soon as you're in North Carolina, it was red clay and pine trees. And it was just sort of like oh, yep, we sure are in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But I'm walking along, and in the red clay, which was really soft and slick, there were all these raccoon prints. Which raccoon prints are really cool, because basically a raccoon's little hand
Yeah.
looks almost exactly like a human hand, except they've got nails. But the nails kind of extend out further than the little handprint. But they're really cool looking. And I stopped at one point, and I can't remember if I came up upon somebody or if they were overtaking me on the trail. But I'm looking down at all these raccoon prints, and they're looking down at all these raccoon prints, and this person just sort of had this like kind of disheveled, like almost like offended kind of a like look on their face, and finally he just says, I swear, who just lets a baby crawl around out here? And I was like, number one, that's adorable, but number two, these are raccoon prints. And he was like, oh.
This baby's been breaking open small oysters.
Who just lets a baby crawl around in the middle of the woods?
This baby loves freshwater oysters. Good God. Well, let's listen to another animal phone call here.
Hey, Pox and Puss. This is Disco from the Trail Show. I just saw your tweet about animal interactions in the woods and thought I would weigh in. Back in 2004, I was through hiking the PCT and was up in Northern California with 2 other guys. And it was getting late. We'd hiked about 2 or 3 miles longer than we had wanted to, trying to find a suitable spot to camp. And we never found it, so we ended up camping off the back end of some switchbacks in a tiny little spot. And at about 2 a.m., I woke up and my tent was collapsed on me. And I was kind of startled. I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. I put my headlamp on and got out of my tent. And I walked around to the back where I saw that the stake had been uprooted, which is what caused my tent to collapse on me. And so I'm trying to figure out how did my stake get uprooted? Well, there was a dead mouse right beside the stake. So all I can figure is that a mountain cat of probably fairly significant stature was creeping through, didn't see my guy lines, tripped it, and dropped what was in his mouth, which was probably the mouse, and collapsed my tent all at the same time. Either that or it was Bigfoot. Hey, you guys, love the show. Keep doing what you're doing. And, yeah, Diva Cup. Out.
Yeah, Diva Cup.
Yeah. If you guys haven't checked out the Trail Show, check out the Trail Show with that whole gang there. I have something like that as well. I think I've talked about it before, where I had the mountain lion like do 3/4 of the way around my tent, and and that's where the guy's like, I saw these hoof prints. The guy from Brooklyn. I saw these hoof.
It was bounding.
That's my best Brooklyn accent, by the way. And it's bounding. Yeah, and sure enough, the hoof prints of this mountain lion had made its way around 3/4 of my tent, and and of course it went around where my head was. Like the only time I ever slept like at the foot of my tent, my head at the other end because of level issues.
Weird.
Yeah, and it was like right around my head, like oh. Now, another time, another thing that I had issue with as far as the nighttime creeping around thing, when we were leaving New York and heading into Connecticut the next day. I think that's where, is that Covered Bridge, or there's a Telephone Pioneer Shelter is New York. And then like miles later in the day, you're crossing into Connecticut, and there's like a convenience store, really nice, like, stone convenience store across this bridge. And all I wanted was like something like a soda of some kind. So I think I got like Mountain Dew or something like that. I was like, oh, Mountain Dew sounds great right now. And so they had a little patio outside where you could sit and eat and that kind of stuff. It was a nice day. And we had stayed at Telephone Pioneer with Prof and Peace Pipe, and we talked about on that show, and the woman that was beating the drum wearing a skirt and just basically showing us, she hiked up her skirt and showed her world to us, as Dave Matthews would say, and just by playing the drums. And we're all like, oh, hey, how you doing? But so that was a memorable night. Then the next day, we were going in the town, and Prof and Peace Pipe knew some people in town, and we were continuing on. I must have drank like at least like 3 or 4 Mountain Dews, and I was like, I think I'm going to take 1 or 2 with me, and so kept on going. And off, who was at that time a 1-time Grandmaster champion, had already hiked the trail. He said, if you walk a little bit further past where the AT comes in, there's some spots where you can kind of stealth camp. And we're like, okay, well, that's fine. And he's like, and they're right along the river. And so we kind of were like taking his advice, which of course, as we all know on this show, you should never take any of our advice.
Never.
So it was kind of got to the point where it was like, dude, there's no flat spots along this. And it's like the road is right there next to, like where you would want to camp is right next to a road, like kind of sketchy. And so then we came to this point where it was like, there was a hill between us and the Housatonic River. And so I was like, all right, I dropped my pack and I ran up this hill like 100 and something feet and was like, there's actually a flat spot. Looks like people have camped up here. So we both, ran back down, grabbed my pack, came back up, and we set up our tents about probably maybe like 15, 20 feet apart, but like facing each other. And we were slathered in DEET because it was just like bug central. And we just kind of had our little Crazy Creek chairs, and it's like we're sitting on our own porches talking to each other. And so I'm sitting in the fly. I didn't actually put my fly on. It was a really nice night. So I was like sitting in front of my tent. Barf's sitting in front of his tent. We're just kind of sitting there, drinking, talking, and then it was like, all right, time for bed. So I get into my tent, and then I had that moment where you wake up, and you're like, I didn't just wake up, I was awoken. And I kind of laid there, and I was like, why did I just do that? And then I hear, obviously something on two legs walking up the hill towards us. Like, it did not sound like a deer. It was like, because they always have that, this was definitely something with bipedal movement. And it was like, just coming up the hill, and then, get ready for it, I heard, whoa! And it was like, what the fuck is that? And the only way I've ever been able to describe this, this noise, it sounded like, do you remember the old school American Gladiators?
Yeah.
Okay. Remember when you had to make your way from one station to the other, and they're like, you're down in the bottom, you're shooting a gun on the first one, you got like a bazooka, you're trying to hit the thing above, zap. Meanwhile, they're on top with a tennis ball cannon.
Yeah.
That shoots 100 miles an hour. And it's like, Fwah,
yeah.
Fwah. All right. So shooting out of a long, skinny tube, making that noise, right? So I'm just laying there, and I was like, what the fuck is that? I mean, I turned cold. It's like, what the fuck?
I hate that feeling.
Is some guy doing in the woods with the goddamn American Gladiators tennis ball cannon? Fwah. And I'm like, dude, this is fucking weird. And so we're in a place where we shouldn't be, and I'm just kind of like, barf. I'm trying not to be loud because maybe they haven't seen us. And I had a watch, and I looked at my watch, and it was like 2:02. And I'm like, barf. That dude slept with earplugs, no matter where we were. He just got used to it. Like, usually it started with just shelters, and then it turned into, I need to wear them all the time. Yeah. So I'm like, barf. I have what they call the Ladybug Spyderco knife, which is 3.5 inches, 4 inches, with the blade out, total.
Yeah.
And it's very...
Is it that really short, fat blade?
No.
Okay.
This was like keychain size.
Okay.
And it was actually something that my girlfriend at the time, her dad gave away as like freebie things,
Right. Yeah.
for clients. And so it had his business name on it. So it's really great for opening packages of jerky.
Perfect.
That was about the best thing it was for. And like everything else I needed on a thru-hike. And so I'm sitting there and I click. I've got 2 inches of blade, ready to go. 1 3/4 inches of killing power. And then this thing just keeps walking towards us. And I'm like, holy shit. And kind of like Hawkeye talked about, didn't do a great job of having the food bag up. I think it was more kind of like a hanging on a limb thing. And that'll do. But it's, so it's on the other side. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And so this two-legged thing just keeps walking up. And it gets about 20 feet away from our tents. And it's just like, whoa! I kind of barely pop my head up. The mesh in my tent was about 2 feet off the ground. And so I was being real quiet. And then I realized I was making the classic nylon zipper Velcro noise. No, just got to stay here. And then it came a little bit closer. And then it started walking back down the hill like the same direction we had come up. And I'm like, sweet. And right about that time that it's starting to walk away, it's hitting me. You just had 5 Mountain Dews a matter of hours ago, and I felt just like Forrest Gump meeting Kennedy. It was like, I must have 4 or 5 Dr. Peppers. And all I could think of was like, I gotta pee. And that's all I could think of is I have to piss. And I was like, all right, who or whatever that is walking away, and I've got to get up and piss. And right as I'm like just touching the zipper to get out of the tent, whoa, starts walking back up the hill. I'm like, dude, what the fuck is this? And it's like, do I get out? And then it was like, it's still pitch black. And I'm like, what do I do? And so it comes back up. This thing circles our camp for like 2.5 hours. And just occasionally, whoa! And I'm like, dude, it's a very metallic, like strange, tubular kind of sound. I'm like, what the fuck is this? So, I go back and forth, like, what do I do? What do I do? And it starts to walk down, comes back up. It just keeps coming back up to our tents. I'm like, dude, this guy is crazy. And so at this point now, I'm like, if I get out, he wants something. And I don't want to have to deal with whatever this is. And so finally at like, I think it was 5:30. It was right around 5. I knew that the sun was going to come up right around 5 something. So I was like, all right, well, as soon as first light comes up, I'm jumping out of the tent with my 2-inch knife. I'm basically kicking Barf's tent to get him awake. And I'm going to do whatever I have to do, because now I'm going to be able to see it and I'm going to know what's going on, and I'm about to piss myself. So I get up, and then at this time I hear my man go down the hill, and then I hear it walking across the road when it hit the actual pavement down there. And so I got up, I went and took a leak, and then I ran over to the hill, and I couldn't see any. That was still too dark, and I was too far off down the hill. And so I was like, all right, that was fucking crazy. So then I go back in the tent, and I'm awake for like 2 minutes, and then boom, I'm out. And then I'm woken up at like 9 o'clock to Barf, like completely packed up, like, hey dude, you ready to roll? And I was just like, fuck you. And he's like, what? And I'm like, dude, the earplugs have got to go. He's like, what? I'm like, did you really seriously not hear anything last night? He's like, no. I'm like, you didn't hear that motherfucker walking around our camp all night, like with some kind of machine making a noise all night? And he's like, no, what the fuck? He's like, you're crazy. And sure enough, we went over to this one spot, and we saw like a triangular print in like some mud and leaves up around us, like this like triangular kind of thing. And he's like, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, I've never seen that print in my life. I don't know what it is. I mean, it looked like Donald Duck himself had been walking around in this one area, and we're like, that's fucking crazy. And there was obviously like a point where you could see like something had dug down into the mud at the front of this triangular print. We're like, that's just weird. I'm like, let's just go. So hop back on the trail, and then we made it to Kent, Connecticut that day. And there's an outfitter in town. And we were walking around, and I needed to get some oil water purification stuff. And then I was like, hey, I got a question for you. And I got like halfway through the story, and they were like, ostrich. I'm like, excuse me? They're like, yeah, it's an ostrich. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean that's an ostrich? And they're like, what happens is, there are ostrich farms all around. And what happens is when a male gets too old to breed, usually their meat and their just in general ostrich-tude is a little too old, and a little too gamey, a little too whatever. And so it's easier for farmers to basically, have 2 sets of fences. So they put like all the good ostrich on one side of the fence, and the other one happens to be left in a field that has a gate open. And so they can actually get more insurance. Like, hey, my ostrich disappeared. So they can claim some like, kind of insurance thing. So there are like all these random male ostriches rolling around the woods of Connecticut.
Oh, God.
And and they're like, usually they get they don't do well, or they do okay for a bit, or something gets it because they're tame. They don't know what to do.
Right.
They're like, he was probably just asking you guys for food. Like he was probably just looking for people. Like, they're still not. But it was just like, what? And if you ever go to that shelter that is just north of Port Clinton, I can't remember, but it's like in somebody's backyard. It's one of those. It's like,
sounds familiar.
yeah,
But
it's one of those that has like a refrigerator in the thing, and it's like some dude's backyard. When you go in there, they keep a register, like a hardbound register for each year, and I want to say it was 96 or 97. And these books are like the size of like a school yearbook. Mm-hmm. And there's one story in there that's like 2.5 pages of this gigantic book, and it's like told completely from the perspective of somebody who was attacked by another person, but they never say person in it. And it was like, he came out of the woods, he saw me taking pictures, and he did not like that, so he hit me once across the face. And it's like this 2.5 page long story, and it's an ostrich that attacked this guy. And it was like, other people were trying to help me, but they couldn't get near this, and he kept pushing me away, like this whole thing. And then it was like
told from the viewpoint of the ostrich.
No, it's told from the viewpoint of the guy, but he just keeps saying he. Never says it, never says anything like that. And then at the end, you're like, it was something like, I never thought I would have to fight an ostrich in my life, but I did. And you're like, whoa, that was a fucking ostrich. Like, you go back to the beginning, and you're like, oh my God. You had to read it again. But that to me was one of the craziest things that happened to me on the trail, being surrounded by an ostrich for 3.5 hours. Sorry, long story.
No, that was a good one, though. Go.
You want to listen to? We have one more phone call.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Hey, Fox and Puss. It's A. Whitey from We Will Finish. Well, made it to Vernon. Just got to say that this bear encounter actually probably takes the cake. Coming in right before Vernon, trying to ease through a little section that had water. No glasses on. Didn't realize there was a bear literally in my face. Tried backing up, and me and Moose, both of us actually, went into some nasty stagnant water. Poor girl that picked us up, we really thought we smelled like shit, and I could tell we smelled like shit. So, that's our fun for the day. Guys, have a good one. Love your show. I'll keep sharing. Thank you.
So he didn't have his glasses on and realized there was a bear in his face. And yes, that was Hey Whitey again. That was actually, those phone calls are 10 days apart. So he had the mouse nibbling, and then almost had a bear nibbling. Man. I worked with a guy who had a bear. Yeah, the guy had a little macaroni and cheese from dinner on his arm. They cooked a ways away, but he still had like some residue on his arm. And it was like at a camp, so they shared tents as they moved through the backcountry. And he woke up to his buddy kind of screaming, and he thought, hey, just chill, like calm down. And then he realized that his buddy was freaking out, and he was like, oh my God. And the guy's like, bear. So the bear basically like kind of cut a little hole in the tent, and then like reached his mouth in and was kind of like, what is that? So he wasn't like aggressively biting it. It was kind of like, I smell a little something. What is that? And like,
yeah,
just cut it. So the kid got a couple of puncture wounds, but they weren't like real deep.
Right.
But like the bear was
almost more like being gummed. Like,
yeah. Like it was like a lick, kind of like.
Is
what
this
is
entire
this?
thing mac and cheese, or just the outside? So
he's kind of getting nibbled on there, and best part is, the guy I knew who was out there, one of those dudes that even though you're sharing a tent with somebody, you're still like a naked sleeper, know. And so he pops out of the tent. And these are the old A-frame style tents.
Yeah.
Pops out of the tent, grabs the metal pole, whack, smacks the bear on the ass, and the bear runs off. Buck naked, smacks a bear in the ass.
That wouldn't have been my first go-to, but, it just wouldn't dawn on me. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to yank this pole out of this tent, and I'm going to hit him. Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah, no, not my number one either.
I'm glad he did it, and I'm glad it worked, but
yeah. Huh. So if you have any animal stories you'd like to share with us, give us a call, 828-394-4526. Animal stories are always fun, usually when they don't involve getting kicked in the head by a deer. And so maybe we'll share those. Also, if you guys can think of times you feel like you might have been discriminated against, that'd be good. I put it up on Twitter the other day asking people if they had, and at Robert David 77 posted, I said, coming off the Arizona Trail, he was told he couldn't get on a bus because of his smelly, dirty equipment, and probably him also. Yeah, it seems like a lot of the discrimination is smell related, because...
Which is semi-understandable,
Yeah.
but it feels like something that could be probably worked around.
Yeah. But so if you feel like you've, we're not trying to put any, we're not trying to have any lawsuits or anything like that, but just like if you feel like you've...
In the words of Ben Folds, y'all don't know what it's like being male, middle class, and white. We're not trying to, liken ourselves to horrible instances.
We're not linking arms and singing "We Shall Overcome."
Yeah,
we're just talking about like, do you ever feel like, hey, get out of here, Stinky?
Yeah, hey, bear fucker.
Can't sit here. But yeah, if you feel like that, if you feel like you've been discriminated against, call the law offices, Pox and Puss. No legal advice actually given. But we can send you on directive. What do they always say about LegalZoom? But they can provide self-help services on your own. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. I listen to too many podcasts. So yeah, let's see. What else? You can find us on Facebook. Just look for Pox and Puss. You can find us on Twitter at Pox and Puss. You can find me at Pox Holiday on Twitter.
And I am at AT Puss in Boots.
And you can find me on Vine. Just look for Pox Holiday. And we're both on, and Pox and Puss is on Instagram at Pox and Puss or hashtag Pox and Puss. Let us know, hey, do you have your theme song you want to give us? You never know. You have a tin whistle? Give it a shot. Is that it?
Real quick, I just want to give a shout out to two of our, specifically Twitter followers, Marine_AT_hiker and Cap'n Griever. Griever used to be super active on Twitter, and she has not been this summer because she has put a lot of her summer hours in with the Conarock crew, doing trail maintenance, and Marine AT Hiker is now in the great state of Maine doing some awesome work on the AT up there and surrounding trail maintenance areas.
Yeah, and he was named Trail Maintainer of the Appalachian Trail Maintainer of the Year. So
we couldn't do it without you. We being all hikers everywhere. Every trail needs work done on it, and every trail that needs work done needs volunteers. So big thanks to those two specifically for putting in some big hours this year. If you have a trail maintainer that you want to give a big shout out to, holler at us. We would love to honor our trail angels.
Absolutely. And give us a call, 828-394-4526 for the Pox and Puss hotline for anything trail related. Like this week was completely spawned by Whitey's call of the mouse nibbling on someone's mouth. It's like, hey, we haven't talked about animal interactions that much, so boom. So anything that ever happens, just go ahead and put 828-394-4526 into your phone. That way you won't have to find us anywhere. You can just go, oh my God, I just saw blah, 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 or I just heard this. I'd love to hear some overheard stuff on the trail.
Oh yeah, those are good ones.
Yeah, those are always good.
You Can't Give Up on Love Just Because of Bad Breath by Ermint. This was my other favorite. Just because you got rolled around the friary in a trash barrel doesn't qualify you for Niagara Falls.
We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Be it, dream it, love it.
Are you recording that?
Oh, yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
good.